One of the hottest summer destinations was all the rage back in the 19th century. You can call it the intellectual's vacation. Here with the details of what you're missing if you aren't hitting Chautauqua this year is Ann Tergesen of the Wall Street Journal. She's right here beside me. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I have never been to one of these, but I'm very intrigued by Chautauqua. I'm saying that correctly.
Exactly.
What is it and how did it originate?
Sure. Well, the first one started in 1874. It started in upstate New York, and it originated as an assembly for Sunday school teachers. Many of them actually have roots as religious camps of sorts, and so the one up in upstate New York then it started to secularize its programming, and in particular it started something called the Chautauqua Literary and Scientific Circle, which was at that point a correspondence course. It was a 4-year correspondence course. And people from across the country would enroll in it, people who didn't have access to higher education, particularly women. It was a very important way for people to get access to education. And they would take this 4-year correspondence course and they would graduate and sort of have a smattering of what a college education was all about.
And so now it's changed a lot. I mean, it's a much more sort of fun, not that wasn't necessarily fun, but fun these days. It's a fun type of place to go. What kinds of activities do they do there today?
Sure. So today, most Chautauquas offer 4 types of programming. There's a heavy emphasis on the arts. The one up in upstate New York, for example, has its own opera company, its own theater company. It has a symphony. They have performances from just sort of contemporary entertainers who come through. They also feature a lot of children's programs. There's children's camps and sailing classes, swimming classes, all sorts of recreational facilities.
And logistically, how does it work? And do you go to the Chautauqua and stay on the grounds like in housing that they have, or do you stay in bed and breakfasts around it? How does it work?
Well, there's a range, and it really depends on the Chautauqua itself. The larger ones tend to have hotels, bed and breakfasts, and they're also summer communities. Right. So there's families that own cottages there and have owned, in some cases, for generations, and a lot of them rent them out.
They rent them out. What's the cost of something like this?
Well, it really, again, depends on the Chautauqua. Some of them are what are called gated, and in that case, it's sort of like you go and you pay a price, and depending on whether you buy a pass for the day or the week or the month or whatever, the price is going to vary. But at the one up in New York, for an adult, it's $73 per day, and for a week, it's about $420.
So very reasonable, for
right,
vacations.
and that gives you access to a lot of their programs. But then, of course, you have to pay for lodging and food on top of that.
So it's sort of, I mean, obviously it is a throwback to sort of simpler time. I mean, I can't, and I'm not even sure if this probably wasn't a Chautauqua, but I'm thinking of the movie Dirty Dancing, where they were sort of all staying on the premises and they did these dancing activities. They had theater, and maybe you met Patrick Swayze. I don't know if you were lucky, but in this age, I mean, do parents sort of gravitate to this because they feel like it's kind of a safe environment, somewhere to go where they can actually let their kids kind of roam around on their own a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, these are pretty small communities. You know, in a lot of cases, the long-term residents, everybody knows each other. They're gated in some instances, as I mentioned. So there's this definitely a very small town feel to them, and parents definitely feel comfortable, especially with the kids having access to programs for themselves.
And some big name performers on those programs.
Yes, in some cases there are. You know, some of the larger Chautauquas, attract all sorts of. Well, for example, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not exactly a performer, but she's coming to lecture this summer at the Chautauqua in New York.
And musicians and so
forth.
Musicians.
Yeah, Steve Martin's going to be there. Lots of classical, musicians who are well known in New York City, ballet dancers.
Great,
and,
great. All right, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, Ann Tergesen, more in the Wall Street Journal from her.